All right, everybody, so welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. If you're new here, make sure to like, subscribe. It helps me out a whole lot. I'm always putting out stuff on bass fishing, so, if you'd like to be a part of that, make sure to hit that subscribe. Also, if you have any questions, as always, drop a comment down below, or if you just want to talk fishing, I love hearing from you guys. So either way, we're going to talk about my top baits for December, but we're kind of going to cover it, I don't know, a little different than most people cover it, but, either way, stay tuned. This is something you don't want to miss. So as always, everything will be linked down in the description. From all the baits that I talk about, the gear, everything, sponsors link, everything will be linked down in the description. You go down there, click on it, carry you straight to the website, and then you can check the stuff out if you'd like. So the first one that I want to talk about, this is one that you can kind of use it a little bit of everywhere. Maybe these fish are pushed up under docks, you can use it. Maybe these fish are, positioned on the points, which is typically where they're going to be, or they're in a ditch. Either suspended or close to the bottom, something like that. This is going to be a good way to target those fish, but that's with the football head jig. Okay, football heads are one of my favorite jigs to use, and this is one that I picked up that I just wanted to try. This is the Dobbins football jig. It's got that rubber skirt. Well, it's got rubber mixed in with just your regular silicone, but either way, it's just a good jig that I've found to target spotted bass. It's got a little bit light wire hook on it, a little bit more of a light wire hook. I don't know if you can see it or not. And one of the biggest things is that weed guard. The weed guard doesn't turkey tail a whole lot. It will start to turkey tail, but it doesn't, just after 4 or 5 casts. It's one of the issues I had with a lot of different jigs that I've used. But I'm putting either a crawl chunk, which is that Rage Crawl. I'm putting that Rage Crawl on there. There it is, that Berkeley ball scrub, throwing one of the two. Typically, when that water temperature gets below 65, I'm going to throw the grub. When it's above it, I'm going to throw the Rage Crawl, okay? It's 2 different actions. One will help slow that bait down a little bit more than you're already getting it, and, so on and so forth. But either way, I'm typically not going to be stroking this jig, okay? So I'm not going to be popping that jig. I'm not really going to be doing anything wild. Typically, what I like to do with a football jig this time of year, and it helps me cover water at the same time while I'm just targeting those specific fish, but I'll throw that bait out there, let it hit bottom, and then I'm going to keep my rod tip up, and I'm just going to slow reel that bait. Just super slow, ticking it over rocks and stuff like that. Every now and again, especially if I get that hard thump, like I've hit something, I'll pause it. Now, I may give it a little shake, try to get it over, but I'm doing everything slow. Everything's slowing down, metabolisms are slowing down. These fish doesn't need to eat as much, so you kind of got to entice them unless you just get lucky and get on them right when they're wanting to eat. But a lot of times that's not going to happen. But the setup's going to be the most important part. 7'3" medium heavy fast action rod, a 13 fishing Fate is what I'm using typically on my jig rods, or as far as using jigs. But 7.3 to 1, yeah, 7.3 to 1 gear ratio, 13 fishing reel. I've absolutely fell in love with 13 fishing reels, like them a whole lot. But 15-pound fluorocarbon test. I'm throwing 15-pound fluorocarbon test. Why am I throwing fluorocarbon? Simply because I'm making those super long casts, less stretch in the line. And when that bait's out there really, really far, I can set that hook, and I don't really have a whole lot of issues as far as getting that good hook penetration that you probably would have with mono. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Back in the day, you'd throw that mono, you'd throw it out there real far, you'd get those big bites and stuff like that, and you get to set the hook, and it's just like no matter how hard you set the hook, you just couldn't penetrate the fish's mouth. But with fluorocarbon, you don't necessarily have to set the hook with all your might, okay? When those fish go to pull and you go to reel down on them and set the hook, you're gonna get them stuck. And that's one of the biggest things I wanted to talk about when you're using that football jig like I'm talking about. You're kind of gonna set the hook like you're using a swim bait, okay? So when you're reeling that bait and you feel that thump and that fish gets that bait, you're kind of gonna pull into them as you reel down, okay? And most of the time that's gonna make your hang-up ratio go through the roof, especially when you're out there on those super long casts, because if you do that, just the slack line when it's so far out there, it may penetrate a little bit, but sometimes you're just not going to get those fish in the boat. But when you're reeling it, you can kind of think of it as a swim bait. You're covering water, you're trying to entice those fish. Just remember to move slow. You wanna creep that bait. Now the next ones that I want to talk about, this is it's kind of going to be 2 in 1, okay? Just a crankbait, okay? So, but there's 2 that I really use in December a whole lot, and one's that Berkeley Money Badger. Great around those channel bends. So you know those channel bends, steep bank, a lot of rock. Money Badger is exactly what it's called. It's money. You can use this bait just like you do a rock crawler or anything like that. A rock crawler by Spro is another great one. Y'all have heard me talk about it, but I really like this Money Badger because the way that bill design is shaped, you're going to come through stuff real easy, just like you would with the rock crawler. But you know, the bait being more narrow and stuff, it's got that tight wiggle that you want in those cooler months where it's just the bait's screaming, I'm cold, okay? Everything's screaming it's cold. But this is going to be good going through rocks, brush, all that good stuff. I really love it on those deep channel bends and stuff like that when those fish are usually suspending off those points. You can, or off those ledges, I guess you would say. But you know, I'm lining my boat up and I'm running that bait, you know, down those ledge where that initial drop off is, where those fish are typically going to sit. They'll either come up and eat it, or either, you know, you're going to bring it right by them and they're going to eat it as soon as it comes by them. But you know, I'm creeping this bait. Once again, 7:3 to 1 gear ratio, but I'm creeping it. So 7:3 to 1, I've got to go even slower. But you know, this bait's going to dive in that 8 to 10 foot range, so it's nothing crazy. But 7 foot medium moderate action rod is exactly what you want. I'm running the Tyco series by Thunderhawk once again. 15-pound fluorocarbon is what I'm going to go with because I'm hitting rocks and stuff. I want as much abrasion resistance as I can. I don't want my line nicking like crazy. So, you know, pick you a good fluorocarbon line. I highly suggest Seaguar. That's what I've run for a long time. But either way, let's talk about those fish that are suspending that you can use this exact same setup on. All right, so the fish that are suspending maybe off those ledges or on points and stuff like that, I'm using that exact same setup, but I'm going to go to a rattle trap, okay? And typically, I'm going to do this silent version. This is the silent version by Thunderhawk. This is the Sergeant lipless. It's got that 360 barrel swivel. Everything's set up the way you want it. You take it out of the pack and it looks just like this. I've done nothing to the bait. It's set up to go. But either way, I'm throwing this bait out there on those points and stuff where those fish are suspending, and I'm just rolling through them. Every now and again, I'll give it a little speed, slow it down a little bit, maybe like something's chasing it, it's trying to get away a little bit, but it's too cold. The silent's going to be perfect. That clean, clear water, bluebird, sunny sky days, it's going to be absolute money. Now, flip side, maybe they're doing the same thing, but they're, you know, kind of pushing close to cover. Then I'm going to go to that Sergeant lipless, but I'm going to go with a rattling version, okay? It's very similar the way it runs to the War Pig as far as running it around cover and stuff. It's really hard to get, you know, the Berkeley War Pig hung up. It's really hard to get the Sergeant lipless crankbait hung up. These are great for yo-yoing and stuff like that. It kind of gives it that flutter action, stuff like that on the way down. So, you know, there's multiple things that you can do with a lipless and get tons of bites. I mean, it's great for suspended fish if they're on bottom. You know, if they're close to the surface, you can do multiple things with lipless. So make sure you got a lipless. Make sure you got something like the Money Badger or the rock crawler tied on this time of year. All right, so the next one that I want to talk about is a jerkbait, okay? It's really hard to beat a jerkbait during winter. It is a very exciting bite in a very cold time of year. But, you know, I'm using the Slash 110. You got the Slash 110, and then you've also got the Slash Double Deep, okay? And they're going to have their own purpose, obviously. Like the other day when we're at the lake and we got those 35-mile-an-hour wind gusts, right? Those fish are pushing down to that 15 to 25 foot mark. That Double Deep's going to be perfect. Okay, I'm going to make that super long cast. I'm going to reel that bait down till I get it down close to the target depth range, and then I'm going to pop. Pause, pop, pop, pause, pop. You're moving that bait slow. We're not doing that wild action with the jerk baits again, trying to get those crazy reaction bites. You're going to do the same thing, but you're going to mimic that I'm cold. So slow it down, 1 to 2 pops. And a lot of times when I pop that bait, this time of year, it's just a slight. You know, I'm not wham, I'm not hammering it, okay? Like I'm trying to get those crazy reaction bites that I talk about. But you know, sometimes it's just a pull. Sometimes it's just a light twitch of the rod, okay? 1 to 2, mix it up a little bit, okay? The colder the water, the longer the pause. Anything really 65, like if the water temperature is 65 to 70 degrees, right? I do a pop, 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 you know, it's not that long of a pause, maybe a second. Now, once it drops down below 65, then we're talking, you know, when I first get there, I may do a 3-second pause. Nothing starts happening. I may go to a 5-second pause and then just keep creeping up, especially if the conditions are set up just right for a jerkbait, because a lot of times the pause is going to determine your success on a jerkbait. Now, I'm using that 6'7" / Tyco series rod by Thunderhawk once again. It's made just for jerkbaits. Absolutely love this rod. When it comes to jerkbaits, 7:3 to 1 gear ratio. I want that higher speed gear ratio. That way I can take line when those fish hit this bait from behind. And then main thing is you want to go 10 to 12 pound fluorocarbon, okay? 10 to 12 pound fluorocarbon is what I suggest. If you go anything above 10 to 12 pounds, you're going to start having those issues with you not getting as much action out of the bait. Now, here's the thing. You don't want a whole lot of action. Okay, you don't want a whole lot of action, but if you're doing light twitches anyways, you know, that 10 to 12 pound test can typically get you down just a little bit further. Like this bait right here, if I had 15-pound test on this, you're talking 6 to 7 foot max. Put 10 to 12 pound test on this, I can probably squeeze 8-9 foot, okay? Especially with the 10-pound test, I could probably easily get down to 9 foot. But you know, just maximizing depth ranges, maximizing as much action as you can get away with during the winter is definitely going to be a key. But whatever jerkbait you decide to choose, I suggest using a jerkbait that has a lazy movement, okay? So if I jerk this slash really hard, it's kind of got that lazy dart action, okay? It's not like the Mega Bass where it's here, 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 okay? This kind of got that, you know, it's a real lazy action. The Strike King does it also. What's the other one? I used to use it a lot. I can't remember. But there was another one. But either way, the Slash by Thunderhawk, or you know, the Strike King, stuff like that, it's kind of going to have that lazy dart action. Okay, it's just not going to be crazy wild, because you don't want those crazy wild darter actions. The Mega Bass is a great one this time of year too. I think it's the Katana or something like that. That I've heard great stuff about it. But you know, your hard jerk baits is going to be great for those windy situations. Those fish that are chasing bait fish, it's a great way to get tons of bites, pinch points, places like that. You're going to knock it out of the park. Points, anything. Give a jerkbaits a try. Now, the next one that I want to talk about is, I've talked about it a couple of times this year, but there's a little bit different way that I use this bait this time of year. But either way, that's a chatterbait, okay? Whatever chatterbait you decide to go with. This is the Jackhammer by Z-Man, and I'm running that freeloader on the back of it, the Rapala Crush City freeloader. Now, what I mean by running this differently is most of the time during the winter, you're going to be fishing those ditches. You're going to be fishing those points. You're going to be fishing, you know, when the water stains up from a good rain, you're going to be fishing close to cover, where those fish are going to isolated cover and huddling real close to it, but they're close to the main lake and stuff like that. You're going to get a lot of wind. Chatterbait is a great way to have all that vibration in the water where those fish are. It's easy for them to locate that bait. They can find it very, very easily, and you can crawl that bait. You can fish this bait deep. A lot of people don't do that. I see a lot of people, they're throwing next to cover and stuff like that, and there's nothing wrong with that if you catch a fish that way. But during the winter, when those fish are out there on the main lake points and they're suspended or they're huddled close to the bottom, chatterbaits. Throw that joker out there, let it sink all the way to the bottom, and you're going to do the same thing that I was talking about with a football jig, just enough to where you feel the vibration of the blade, okay? Now, I am running this on fluorocarbon. Now, like I talked about, when you're running these chatterbaits and stuff, you know, swapping between mono, fluorocarbon, and braided line. Braided line is going to have more of that straight action, but it's going to be, you know, it's going to run straight. Clean, clear water. Fluorocarbon, 100%. If you can get away with braid, go to braid. But the reason I go with that fluorocarbon, it gives it a little bit different action, okay? Just like if you run it on monofilament, it's going to get, that chatterbait's going to go all over the place as you're reeling it. With the fluorocarbon, as I'm reeling that bait real slow, it's kind of going to have that straight laced, but every now and again, it'll come up. It'll dive down. It'll just go off track just a little bit, but it's kind of like there is a dead still. So what I mean by that is you'll feel it in your reel. So you'll be reeling it, and then it's like all of a sudden you got a little bit of slack, and then you'll catch up to that slack. and then you're going to feel it again. You're going to get a little bit of slack, and then you'll catch up to that slack again. But what it does is it kind of darts off. When you get it close to the boat, just pay attention to it, because it happens just randomly is one of the cool things. But either way, it'll kind of dart up, and it's kind of like it stalls out because it knocks that slack, because it's like it just jumps too far forward, and it just triggers a lot of bites. So, fishing your points, your ditches and stuff like that, reeling this bait slow, letting it get down deep, let it get down to that 15, 20, 25, 30 foot range. I've heard of people catching them in 50 foot over the tops of trees and stuff doing the same technique. But I've never did that. But I typically use this on those main lake points and stuff like that when those fish go deep and they're out there chasing a lot of bait fish. Great around riprap and stuff like that also. So let's move on to the next one. Now, the very last one that I want to talk about is one of my absolute favorites to fish this time of year, just because I can cover tons of water. It's not like watching paint dry most of the time, for me anyways. And I can target all different depth zones. I can fish it just about anywhere except around heavy cover and stuff like that, because it's going to get hung up a lot. But that's a swim bait. Okay, so this is the 1/4 ounce Squadron Head by Strike King, and I'm going to be throwing the Rage Swimmer. That's the only swim bait. Sorry, but that's the only swim bait you'll hear me talk about this time of year. I do it for a reason, because those ribs are pointed forward. Once again, more resistance. I can slow it down even more and get that same action out of it. 7'3" medium heavy action Tyco series rod by Thunderhawk, 7.5 to 1 gear ratio, real 15-pound fluorocarbon. And what I'm doing is I'm getting on those points and stuff where those fish are, especially when they're sitting on bottom. I can throw that swim bait out there, that big swim bait, that 3.75 inch. Are you going to catch every fish in the lake? Probably not, but you're going to have more consistent bites, because the winter is very, very finicky. The fish are very lethargic. You're going to get more bites, and you're going to catch a lot of bigger fish. I've caught my PB year after year after year off of that swim bait every winter. Every winter, as you're going to catch a lot of big fish. So, not saying that you ain't going to catch small ones with it, but that 3.75 inch is that strong medium where it's not too small, where the 1.5 to 2.5, 3, whatever pound fish, they're going to eat it. They're going to eat it. But it's just enticing enough for those big 5, 6, 7, 8s, 9s, and 10s to eat. It's just that perfect size where they can get that, big meal. Is still natural, but you're crawling that bait. You're just crawling it. No matter what part of the water column you're in, you're just slow turning. And these fish will come from a long ways to get it. If I throw over here and there's a fish 40, 50 foot over here and I'm crawling that bait, they have plenty of time to swim over there. They're typically not going to hit that bait 100 miles an hour. Sometimes they will, especially spotted bass fisheries. You guys who fish spotted bass fisheries, you know exactly what I'm talking about, especially herring lakes. They will annihilate it during the winter. It's not crazy to throw top water when that water temperature is 53 degrees or 50 degrees, a walking bait moving it pretty quickly across the top of the water. So, if you're on, herring lakes with a lot of spotted bass and stuff like that, you may want to give that a shot. But, either way, these baits right here, guys, is typically what I'm going to be running during December, no matter what lake I'm on, whether it's a herring lake, whether it's just, your typical threadfin shad fisheries, whether it's a river system. It doesn't really matter. Stuff's dying off. Water's getting cold, everything's slowing down, so this is a good time to throw these baits right here. You can cover every part of the water column. You can cover all different kinds of cover, just structures, whatever you like fishing or whatever may be on your lake. But either way, guys, if this video helps you at all, make sure to like, subscribe. It helps me out a whole lot. Comment if you have any questions, anything to add, or you just want to talk fishing. I love hearing from you guys. Make sure to check out the description. Everything's linked down in the description. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.